This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 93 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts, and this introduction is going to be very short and sweet because I am obsessed with this episode, and I know that you are going to be obsessed with it too. I recorded this episode a couple weeks back with Annie McCarty, my guest today, and it is all about how to automate the 4 stages of business, as Annie calls them, using only 2 tools, along with your website, of course, but using only 2 tools, Dubsado and Acuity Scheduling. Now, if you don't use one or both of those tools and you use something else that is really similar, stick with us because you can still do everything Annie says with tools that are not Dubsado or Acuity Scheduling, and we actually get into that in the episode. Guys, if you are driving, if you're doing something else, just know that you're going to want to come back and take notes because this is going to blow up your client experience in 2018. It's going to make communication a breeze. It's going to make your clients feel better about working with you because you've offered them an amazing, amazing experience and you have given them the answers they need before they even ask, which to me is like the pinnacle of customer service and client experience. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I want to let you know that I did mention that I would make a download for this episode. It's not ready yet, but I'll pop it into the show notes once it is. So just know it's not ready. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you do want that download, just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. I'm just not ready with it yet. So hope that's okay with you. Hashtag holidays, I'm like getting back into the swing of things. Wanted to let you guys know that the opt-in shop is open. If you want to put, opt-ins in this automation sequence, if you want to serve your clients that way, grab an opt-in at the opt-in shop. Everyone's been really grabbing the ultimate bundle because it comes with everything in the opt-in shop. The opt-in shop are done for you, plug and play content upgrades for your blog posts, for your podcast, for your brick and mortar store, for anywhere that you serve your wedding clients. The opt-in shop is perfect for you. So head over to shecreatesbusinesspodcast.com/shop, grab something in there. Get started building your email list in 2018. I'm doing it along with you. Annie, welcome to the show. Tell you more about that. So without further ado,
thank you, Kinsey. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. Listeners, Annie and I have been going back and forth a little bit, scheduling this interview. So I'm finally happy we're sitting down to do it because, as I mentioned at the top of the show there, we are talking about the 4 stages of business. And I'm looking forward to you breaking this down for us, Annie. But before we really break it down and dig in, can you kind of tell us just an overarching view of what the 4 stages of business are? We don't have to dig into each stage because we're going to do that together, but what are they and why do you like to look at the 4 stages of business this way, or how did you come up with this concept?
Yeah, for sure. So the 4 stages of business are basically the journey that your client takes when they work with you for their wedding. So whether you're a photographer, planner, florist, whatever, each of your clients is going to find themselves in one of these 4 stages at any point in the process. So the first stage is the lead stage. So that's when they first reach out to you, they're not booked yet, and you're kind of in that nurture game. The second stage is when you're following up with them and when you're, again, nurturing them through that process to get to the booking stage, which is stage number 2. And then from there, you'll onboard a new client, and there's kind of almost like a second nurture game that happens between booking and the wedding, because as we all know, there can be quite a bit of time that lapses between when somebody books with you and their actual wedding. And then the last stage, which I think is one that we sometimes forget about, is the offboarding stage. So how to properly offboard a client so that you can hopefully reap the benefit of reviews and referrals from them.
Okay, so number 1 is the lead stage. Number 2 is the booking stage. Number 3 is the nurture stage?
Yeah, nurture and kind of like onboarding, just setting expectations.
Onboarding.
Yeah.
Cool. And number 4 is offboarding. I like that. I'm excited to talk about number 4 because I agree. I think it's a stage that we forget about because it's like, okay, we're done and we did so much work in steps 1 through 3. So now it's like, we're done. So I'm really interested in what you'll have to say about that. Okay, so love this. Let's dig in then and let's unpack stage number 1. So the lead stage of business. What does that look like and what can we be doing better in that stage?
So I think automation is really important. I put a heavy emphasis personally on tech. So the programs that I like to help me automate and really just manage my client relationships are Dubsado, which is a client management tool. I know, Kinsey, I believe you use Dubsado.
I do.
And I also use Acuity, which obviously you're familiar with. So as much as you can do to automate this process, studies have shown that customers expect a response from a vendor within 2 to 4 hours. So I know that during the heat of wedding season, it can be really hard to do that. But if you implement some automation, it can really go a long way. So, for example, somebody fills out a lead capture form on your website because you're an awesome photographer and they want to work with you for their wedding. Just a simple, like automated, hey, just so that you know, I received this message and I'm going to write you back personally as soon as I can. My normal business hours are this to this. So that's when you can expect to get a response from me. It just sets that expectation really clearly and makes them feel loved on immediately.
And how do you feel about the email autoresponders that are they just have so much information in them? I know that I receive email autoresponders and I personally love them, but how do you feel about these, especially if it's a client, not that we can discern who's emailing us, but when we're setting up our autoresponders, how do you feel about the autoresponders that are just packed with information? So I know, like, I'll give you an example. When I email another vendor, they're not just, a lot of us aren't just the vendor. We do a lot of other things in our business. And so I'll receive an autoresponder that's like, if you're one of my 2018 couples, et cetera, I'll get back to you. Like, here's all that information. If you are this, blah, blah, blah. If you this, blah, blah, blah. Tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah. So I think there's a time and a place for something like that. I personally think that a better way to handle that could be setting up a different workflow for each type of client that you take from your lead capture form on your website. So for instance, if you are a photographer that books weddings primarily, but you also do some newborn photos and you also do some senior portraits or whatever, you can trigger a different workflow to start automatically based on the type of client that is reaching out to you. So what that lets you do is give them information that's more relevant to them versus like just dumping everything that someone may or may not need to know into their inbox the first time they reach out with you. So
what do you mean by triggering a different workflow? What does that look like from a technical perspective?
So again, I use Dubsado for this. So essentially, you would have a drop down in your lead capture form that says, like, what service are you most interested in? Weddings, portraits, et cetera, et cetera. When somebody selects the service that they're most interested in, you can trigger something different to happen based on their selection in that question on the lead capture form.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So what Annie is saying, you guys, is she actually, I'm assuming you use the actual lead capture form that you can embed from Dubsado on your site. Is that right? Okay. So if you are not using an embedded lead capture form and you're just using your contact page on your website, like for example, I use Squarespace, and on my venue page, I don't use the lead capture form from Dubsado. I use the contact page, and that contact page feeds into our Gmail accounts, like our Gmail for business accounts. So if you do that as well, what Annie is describing is not possible. You can't do that because there's not a way to trigger a different autoresponder in Gmail, not that I'm aware of. But if you use Dubsado like we do, then this is a possibility for you. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Cool. Awesome. I love that. That's sweet. And so you have multiple lead capture forms, it sounds like, so you can trigger that different workflow depending on what they're contacting you for. Is that right?
Exactly.
Cool. Yep. I love that. And so tell me how you use Acuity.
So I typically recommend that clients use Acuity to schedule consultations, to schedule engagement sessions, to schedule anything that they need to schedule with you that can avoid the, hey, when are you free? I'm free on Tuesday at 10. Oh, sorry, I can't do that. I'm free on Thursday at 1. Like, nobody has time for that. So I use Acuity to schedule anything like that. And also to, again, automate things like appointment reminders to handle the cancellation and reschedule process, so that's like one less thing that you have to be in your email for every day because it's happening automatically alongside of your normal workflow.
And just a little, you guys know I work for Acuity Scheduling, so obviously I have a bias here, but Annie uses it too, so yay. But also in Acuity, just so you guys know, you can customize your notification emails, so that initial appointment confirmation or the reminder emails or the email that goes out when the appointment gets rescheduled, you can customize all of those. So if you need to give information, additional information about that specific process, so the reminder email or the confirmation email or the reschedule email or even a follow-up email, you can customize that with your specific information. So you can say, hey, like if you want to reschedule, here's my link, or I'm not taking any appointments for the next 60 days or whatever it is. And you can customize that every time.
I typically recommend that in those emails, like, so if you're a wedding photographer and you're using them to schedule engagement sessions with your client, in that confirmation email is a great place to kind of up-level the service that you're giving to that client. So you can say like, hey, these are some questions that people typically ask me about how engagement sessions work. Like, this is how long it'll be. This is what you can do to prepare. Here's a Pinterest board I've curated with outfit suggestions. So again, you're giving the client the information they need without them having to ask, which I think is really powerful when it comes to later on in the game when you're hoping for a review from that client.
I absolutely love that. And another place I use in Acuity to up-level the client experience is the confirmation page of the appointment. So the show message after scheduling. So for the venue, I use Acuity to schedule tours. And right now the building is winterized. And so our restrooms are not operating for tours because we're powered by a generator, all of that. Anyway, so I use the show message after scheduling in addition to that email that you're talking about to say, hey, our building is winterized, just so you know, like FYI. And then I also link to our direction page. So just in case people don't know where we are. I love that, Annie. That's so brilliant. What a great idea. And then specifically for photographers or anybody, I love the idea of a curated Pinterest board for engagement sessions or, newborn shots or whatever it is. That's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's awesome.
What else? Is there anything else that we're missing in the automation stage / number one, the lead stage that you want to mention?
No. So I think one thing that people often let slip through the cracks is following up diligently with clients.
In the lead stage?
In the lead stage,
okay.
Yeah, with potential clients.
Tell us what you mean by that.
So typically someone reaches out to you, you respond to them. And if you don't hear back, maybe you follow up, maybe you don't. I think for a lot of people, it's like, if I have time / if I remember, which I totally get because we're all moving a million miles a minute. And like the actual wedding day is like such a small portion of working with a bride.
That's so true.
So typically if you have some sort of system in place to follow a potential client through that lead stage so that at any given time you can tell where they are in the process of potentially booking you, I think you will find that you book more brides more quickly. So what I mean by that is in Dubsado, you can actually set up lead funnels to track the stages of booking. So as soon as somebody fills out that lead capture form on your website, they go into a new leads bucket. 2 to 3 days later, you can set a to-do reminder to follow up with them, move them into that follow-up bucket. If they contact you again, if they do reply to you and they want to schedule a consultation, go ahead and move them into that consultation bucket. So again, you're moving them through this process, and at a glance, you can tell where a lead is in the process just by logging into your dashboard in Dubsado. And if you have a team, this is really great because you can keep track of all of your associates and all of these leads that you may not personally be nurturing through the process, but your team is nurturing through the process. So it really empowers you to be able to be hands-off in this stage if that's something that you want.
I love that. Do you have any suggestions for with this follow-up funnel for folks who are not using Dubsado?
Yeah, so truly, there's some super low tech ways to do this. And before I used Dubsado, this is what I did. So the very first thing I did was anytime that I responded to a lead in Dubsado, anytime I responded to a lead, 3 days later, I just set a calendar reminder to follow up with them.
Yes.
It can be that simple. It doesn't need to be a big process if you don't want it to be a big process. I think the more important thing is just making sure that you stay in front of these people because the fortune is in the follow-up.
I love that. And I agree. It's not really about the method to your follow-up, meaning the technical and logistical aspects of the follow-up. It's about actually doing it. So if you're going to do it using an Excel spreadsheet, awesome, do that. You don't need to pay for Dubsado. If you are going to do it using Dubsado because you really appreciate that automated aspect and all of these amazing things that Annie is using in her business, then yay, do that. So it's actually about the action, not necessarily the tools you use. I think sometimes we can get trapped in the mindset that if I have these tools, if I'm paying for these tools, then that equals I work better or something. And that's not always the case, because if you like, nothing is nothing. So if you're not doing it, you're not doing it. Doesn't matter if you use Dubsado or Infusionsoft or a piece of paper.
Right. Exactly.
Love it. Okay. So love this. I feel good about this lead stage. Anything else you want to add to that lead stage before we move on to number 2, booking?
No, let's rock and roll.
Beautiful. Number 2, booking. Let's talk about that stage in the game.
So anything that you could do to make this process as easy as possible for your clients, I think you have to do it. So I see a lot of people that are still taking paper contracts, that are still requesting check payments. And listen, that's great if it's working for you. I think that if you can bring that experience online, you're not only going to book those clients faster, but it's more convenient for them in the long run. So you can also use automation here. So what you can do is in Dubsado, you can set up a proposal with like a pricing guide. Somebody can select a package. They can automatically be taken to the contract. An invoice is automatically generated for them based on their selections in that proposal. And it's like, boom, 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 like, thank you, I'm booked. Let's do this thing. So bringing that process online and bundling it, again, it's a better experience for your client, and you're going to get paid faster when you do it that way. I'm not saying that you have to do it that way, but from personal experience, I have found that my clients, when they moved to an online system, they end up booking more. So it's just something to consider.
I would agree. What do you think about, so when you connect to a system like Dubsado, in order to accept those payments online, we connect to Stripe. So that's the payment processor that we use. Yep. And I'll tell you guys, we charge $3,700 for a Saturday wedding, and we pay $100 in Stripe fees for every wedding that we process. And so it costs to use something like this, but Annie is so right that you get paid faster, and it's so much more convenient than saying, sure, you can write me a check. Here's our address. Oh, it's not here yet. Okay, could you please send it? Oh, you want to send us a cashier's check? Okay, here's how you do that. I think the ease of use and the lack of friction is worth that fee. But what do you say to folks who may be just getting started in business? And honestly, $100 fee every time you book something, that's a lot. So
it is a lot.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you have any maybe alternative suggestions, or how they can recoup that cost maybe?
I think you build it into your pricing. So it's almost like a line item as you're determining what you need to charge to make money on whatever service it is you're offering. Mm-hmm. You just build that in as an expense line item and make sure that it's accounted for. Mm-hmm. Truly, I think that's the way to go.
I love that. So when we do a contract, we automatically, when we take 50% down, automatically $200 is retained, and it's non-refundable. And that's how we recoup that cost. What are your clients doing to recoup that cost? Are they just billed like it's just their pricing?
Yeah. So clients that potentially didn't have a system like this before but are moving to an online system, they'll just bump that price up by whatever the credit card fee is. So what I see some people do, which I don't necessarily always agree with, is they'll say, okay, if you want to mail me a check, that's fine. If you want to pay by credit card, I'm going to bill you 3% more, which I don't think it should be. I'm not saying you shouldn't be open with your clients, but I don't think that's the way to pass on that fee. So I think the better way is to just build it into your pricing from the get-go. Mm-hmm. You could offer a cash discount, like a pay by check discount if you wanted to. But I think that just as a standard, including that in your price across the board, it's just an easy way to handle it.
Interesting. So if their client cancels, how do they recoup that cost? How do they recoup their fee?
What do you mean if they cancel?
Well, so I just mentioned if our clients cancel, we keep an administrative fee. So if that's just built into the price, how do they recoup that fee if they have to refund the money? Like if they cancel within their refundable period?
Most of my clients don't have a refundable period. It's they put there's a small retainer that's due immediately. Yeah. And then there's kind of a payment plan from there. So it may be like a 20% due immediately, and that's your retainer. That's non-refundable at all.
Oh, brilliant.
And then you make payments along the way, and those additional payments are usually due a little bit closer to the wedding.
Sure.
When everything is a little bit more secure at that point.
Oh, brilliant. Love that. What else about this booking stage can we be doing better in our business, or we can implement to make it easier for our clients?
I think that's really it. I think from here, if we can jump to the onboarding stage, one thing that I think is really powerful is having a way to set expectations and really, again, up-level that experience like immediately after booking. So you've gone through this process. A client has booked you online. It's super seamless. It's super streamlined. Being able to welcome them to the experience of working with you, I think is great. So what that could look like is, thank you so much for choosing me to photograph your wedding, to do your wedding florals, whatever. Yeah. Here's what happens now. Because again, there can be a lot of time between when somebody books with you and ultimately when the wedding actually takes place. So putting things out there, like there may be periods of time when we don't talk much, and that's okay. If you need to reach me, the best way to reach me is phone, email, text, whatever you prefer with your client. My business hours are this. You'll always know that you can hear back from me during those hours. If you want to schedule an engagement session, here's how you can do that. Drop that Acuity link in. If you, you'll hear from me again about a month before the wedding, and we'll chat about, for a photographer, we'll chat about your timeline. We'll chat about any final like must-have photos that you want to make sure that I get on your wedding day. And then your final payment is due on this day. So it really just like outlines how the process works now that they're booked with you, so that they never have to wonder.
This sentence that you just said, what an easy way to like smooth the road and just say, it's okay if we're not in touch every day. There may be periods of time where we don't talk, and that's okay. I love that one little sentence, because it's so true. We're booking out, 12 months in advance, sometimes 2 years in advance, whatever it is. And that is just such an accurate little sentence that could honestly assuage so many like weird feelings for our couples. I love that, Annie.
And
that's so brilliant.
It keeps emails like out of your inbox.
Yeah, that's true.
A little bit of backstory, just for some context. I started this business as a VA. And what I learned along the way is that a lot of clients were having me replicate these super clunky processes or respond to these like emails that they were getting from clients that truly the client shouldn't have had to email to ask the question. If you had a process in place from the start that clearly outlined the expectations, clearly outlined the process, clearly outlined what happened next. This was born from that experience. This was born from me as a VA, like in my client's email saying like, oh yeah, you'll receive a proof within this amount of time, when really that's something that should be communicated very early in the process. And you can prevent a lot of these questions by doing that. And also you're offering a much better experience that, again, in that offboarding stage will really pay you dividends.
Oh my gosh, it's so brilliant. I love it. It's, one of those things, it's like that friction that we kind of talked about earlier. Like, how can I delete this friction? I love that you came up with this. What an easy way to take care of so many questions at once. Just so good. So good. So really quickly, just for my own personal curiosity, how did you go from being a VA to specifically serving wedding professionals?
So it's kind of a funny story. I'm totally the definition of an accidental entrepreneur. This was not in the plan for me. I was working a full-time job. My background is actually in marketing. I have 10 years of marketing experience at the corporate level. And one day I was scrolling Facebook on my lunch break and saw a local wedding photographer who I kind of like had a girl crush on at the time. She was in dire need of an assistant to just kind of like come in and organize all of her business processes. Sure. And I raised my hand and said, yeah, I could totally do that. 5 hours a week, a little bit of extra money in my pocket. It's on my way home from work. Sure. 3 months later, she took me to a bridal show with her. I connected with a lot of her vendor friends who then hired me. And 6 months later, I left my full-time job to do this full-time. At the time, I'm not even going to pretend I did not know what I was doing. I was doing the best I could for these clients. But again, I was replicating a lot of these clunky processes for them. And I just knew that there had to be a better way for these people to do business. So I transitioned out of VA work and into system strategy shortly thereafter. And what I'm finding is now clients who come to me are booking weddings faster because they're actually following up and they're making the booking process easier for their clients. And they're also So they're booking weddings faster, and they're also booking more weddings because they're staying in front of these people. So it was just eliminating like the leaky buckets in people's businesses that I identified as an issue. And truly here we are. Like, it wasn't some grand plan. It was just a need that I saw and knew that I could fill. It's not a glamorous story. I listen to your podcast all the time, and I love hearing all of your guests talk about their journeys. And this was mine. It was truly, it just happened. And I'm so thankful for it.
I love that. Those are the best stories, because I love not having a master plan, because I feel like we can all relate to that. Like, I like doing this thing and I happen to be really good at it. And here I am, congratulations. First of all, that's so awesome. Thank you for letting my curiosity take us on that tangent. I was just so curious, and that is amazing. I absolutely love that. Okay, so nurture onboarding, make a process, people. Get online, get that process online, make it easy, answer questions, be preemptive about answering questions. Like Annie said, so that they're not like, when will I get my album? There's definitely multiple places in your process, on your onboarding process, where you can answer that question so that you can eliminate emails piling up for no reason. What else? Are we missing anything in step number 3, or should we head over to the offboarding number 4 step?
There's a couple of little things that you can automate along the way in this process that certainly are not a requirement, but again, just help to up-level that experience a little bit more for your client. So I'm going to go back to a wedding photographer as an example. If you find that these people are booking you 12 to 18 months in advance sometimes, and you want to do a little bit more to stay in front of them, some things that you can do inside of a Dubsado, or I'm sure that there's a Gmail hack for this, but you can automate little touch points. So say 6 months before the wedding, you know that in another couple of months, you're going to need to talk about the wedding day timeline with your client. So what are some things that your client is going to need to think about when they're planning their timeline for the day? It could be things like doing a first look. So what you can do is, if you've blogged about a first look and the pros and cons of doing a first look, you can just shoot that blog article to your client so that they're starting to get the wheels turning ahead of time. And again, it's certainly not a requirement, but I think the more that you can do, the more information that you can provide to help your clients make better decisions and have a better executed wedding day, the better off everybody will be, both you and them.
Is there anything else that we're missing in that stage?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I love that. I'm just making a note here because I don't want to forget to add that in. Okay. Offboarding. We're done. The wedding is over. The engagement session is over. Whatever. What do we do next?
Okay, so I think this is another place where automation can come into play. If you're using a system like Dubsado, the automation can be based off of the job date, which would in most cases be the wedding date. So just a couple of little touches that you can make directly following the wedding that, again, can help create a better experience for your client so that they're sending people back to you later. Maybe 1 to 3 days after the wedding, you automate a little thank you email like, hey, I am so thankful that you chose me. I loved celebrating with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. By the way, now that your wedding is over, here's what you can expect from me. You'll receive, keep an eye on my Facebook and Instagram. I'll probably post a sneak peek photo within the next week. Keep an eye on my blog. I'll probably post a bigger sneak peek inside of 3 to 4 weeks. This is when you can expect to receive your full gallery. Just setting those expectations like really early on after the wedding so that your client doesn't have to ask. And then again, it's one less email that you're getting from them when they're asking you when they're going to receive things from you after the wedding.
That's so good. Are there any other things we can automate? I know that sometimes, throughout this process, there could be a client gifting stage, maybe in the middle during the planning process, or maybe maybe your client gifting stage is at the end, or maybe you don't have one. Is there any way we can automate, like, hey, here's where you need to send them this stuff, specifically maybe in Dubsado, or just in general, we can just set a reminder, but specifically in Dubsado, is there any way to build in kind of like those gifting experiences?
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you mentioned that. So in Dubsado, you can set a to-do as part of your workflow. So essentially what would happen is you would say, reminder to send Jane Doe a thank you gift 6 months before the wedding or immediately after the contract is signed or whatever that trigger is for you. But that reminder is going to pop into your email so that you don't forget to send that. I've also seen some people do, Starbucks will do like online gift certificates. I've also seen some people do like 6 months before the wedding for no reason other than it's something nice to do, to send like a $10 Starbucks e-gift card and just say like, hey, I'm thinking about you guys. I'm really looking forward to your wedding. Go have a coffee on me, to like take a break from the planning process or something like that. So there's little things that you can do that you can add into that workflow, and they can all totally be automated. So it's not like it's something extra that you have to remember. It's just something nice to do for your clients.
So brilliant. Okay, I'm just making sure I get all this down. Is there anything else you want to touch on in the automation, this is all of the automated stage, in the offboarding stage that we maybe could add into our processes that we might not be doing now?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are hesitant to ask for a review, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Truly, I think people want to help, especially if you like really knocked it out of the park, which I'm sure you have for that client. They are more than happy to sing your praises from the rooftop. Sometimes they just don't think of it. So there's nothing wrong with asking for a review. I suggest making the process as easy as possible for your clients. And this is another place that you can use automation depending on your business. If you're a florist and after the wedding day, the process is basically over, then you can automate that review request email to be sent a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the wedding, whenever you think that it's appropriate. And in that email, just include like links to where people can refer you. So I would appreciate if you, like reviews are such a big part of the wedding business when there are so many great vendors out there. And there's such a big part of the decision-making process for couples that if you left me a review on Facebook, The Knot, Wedding Wire, Google, like wherever you're cultivating those reviews most commonly, I would really appreciate it. And then I think that's another good place to send a little gift after the fact, just to say thank you, or a handwritten thank you card also goes a long way. But that can be automated. That review email can be automated. And as long as you're making it easy and providing like quick links for your client, I think you'll find that you get more reviews as a result. It's a little bit different for a photographer when you're delivering a gallery and that timing isn't necessarily set in stone, but still equally important.
Okay, I hear you. And I'm honestly, like, I think there's some services out there, not that you want to automate everything, but honestly, like if you can and you feel good about doing it, I think there's some services out there where you could even automate like a handwritten note, like Postable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're really into the automation, which I've received some Postable cards for my birthday and stuff, and I still love them. I'm not like, oh, this is automated. The only reason I knew is because I know. You know what I mean? I don't think a bride would know.
Send flowers. I mean, the card is handwritten by the person at the flower shop, not by me.
So true.
It's the same premise.
Yeah, great point. Okay, I feel better about it now. Annie, okay, this has been like the most power-packed 30 minutes. Is there anything else we want to touch on before we sign off? This has been amazing. I cannot wait for everybody to get this information. And you guys, if you're listening, I know you're listening because you're here. As you're listening to this show, tap on your podcast player because I've made a download that has Annie's 4 stages of business in it, and I've made her notes there. So tap your podcast player, go get that download so that you can start implementing some of these things into your business, or you can check your own processes against this because I think this is just so brilliant. So what else do they need to know before we sign off here?
I think it's probably important to talk about the fact that this can probably seem overwhelming. Like truly, when you look at the process as a whole, it can seem like, where do I even start? So the number one tip that I could give you if you want to tackle your workflows is to truly just start by sitting down with a blank sheet of paper and a pen and mapping out, like in an ideal world, how you would want your process to flow from start to finish. And then identify the places that you can include automation into your workflow to make your life easier. And what I find is that when you look at it in terms of these 4 buckets, these 4 stages of doing business, you can identify which stage is your leakiest bucket and focus on that first. So instead of looking at it holistically, like this big thing on your to-do list, if you break it down, I think it becomes easier to digest that way. And you can really target the places that you need to put the most effort into in order to streamline.
I love that. 3 things. Well, a couple of things. Number 1, making you a t-shirt that says plug the leaky bucket. I'm just kidding. But I've been laughing kind of to myself every time you say that because I love it. Secondly, I know people are going to want to stalk you online before, like they don't want you to leave them because you have been absolutely brilliant on this episode. So where can we find you online?
Sure. So I'm on, my website is www.anniemccarty.com. And on Instagram, you can find me at efficientlyannie.
Beautiful. And all of these links will be in the show notes. Number 3, another just quick statement. If Dubsado is listening, you should probably hire Annie to be an evangelist because she is literally using it to max capacity. And I am like excited to go change my Dubsado settings. And finally, do you have any book or podcast recommendations that you can give to our audience that you've been reading or listening to lately?
You know what? I fangirled like pretty hard when you responded to my email for me to be on your podcast because this is truly the one that I listen to the most often. And
I paid her to say that. Just kidding.
Yeah. But I mean, it's true. I listen to this religiously, and I have found some really great podcast suggestions based on the guests that you've had. I don't remember the woman's name, but she talks about productivity both in your business and in your life.
Tanya Dalton, Inkwell
yes,
Press.
I love her.
Love her to death. Oh, she's so brilliant. It is crazy.
Yeah, that is one that I would definitely recommend. Obviously, efficiency is like my jam. But she also talks about how to be more productive in like your life and with your kids and with your family and everything. And I think it strikes a good balance for a business owner that's like so often in hustle mode.
I could not agree more. Yeah. So her podcast, everybody, is called Productivity Paradox. And she was on the show. I cannot remember the episode number, but it's, how to organize your life and business with Tanya Dalton. She runs Inkwell Press, which is planners for your life and business. Yeah, I really like her. I really enjoy her thoughts too. I was able to meet her in person, which is kind of why she came on the podcast. But just listening to her and how she just runs her life as a mom and as a wife and as a business owner, I'm with you. I was like, this is so amazing.
Yeah, she's pretty great. I don't even have kids, and I wrote down like some nuggets for when I do have kids.
Yeah, or share with people who have kids. Exactly. Yeah. I was like, I have kids, but I was, oh man, I could have made pages and notes, but I didn't want to make it weird at dinner.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Annie, this has been like a masterclass, and I cannot thank you enough for being such a giver to me and to the audience. Like, seriously, thank you so much. This has been a brilliant episode. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so happy to be here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. And everybody, catch Annie online and on Instagram. And don't forget to grab your download because you don't want to miss this information. So Annie, thank you so much. I will talk to you later.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.